Welcome back, everyone. Great to have you here today on our Wellness and Weight Loss Wednesday, where the topic that we will be focusing on today is the exact gut healing and digestive plan I use with all new wellness-based clients. Now, of course, it is customized for the individual, but you have to start with a foundation. So I'm actually going to take you through the 9 questions that I ask all gut wellness-based clients and that our team does as well, and then how we move through the progression of what that individual wellness client needs in order to be able to fix their bloating or acid reflux or gas or constipation or loose stool or anything to do with the overall digestive tract. So love to be able to take you through this today. It's also for our amazing integrative health practitioners to help them clearly steer their clients in the right direction as well. And again, hopefully if you're a practitioner too, you can use this in your practice, but this is meant for everyone and to share exactly what we do. So we're going to keep it top level. We're going to take it exactly as if you were to come into the practice. The questions that we would ask as follow-ups once you share your story of your main symptoms. So when someone comes in, I always ask them, we're going to go through all of your symptoms here today, but if we were to only be able to work on your top 1 or 2, what would those be? And I allow people to think about that for a second. Wow, I've got all these different symptoms and all these issues. What if I could only name 1 or 2? Okay, tell me what those are, because now I know those are the ones that we have to fix and the symptoms very quickly, right? We can be working on the long-term rebalancing, but we have to help them with those symptoms. And a lot of times the first one that may come up is bloating and gas and discomfort after eating. Okay, so here's what we would do, right? And here's some of the follow-up questions. I want to share that with you right now. Again, I try to share with you my entire practice, right? I've really laid that out, my de-stress protocol before in the rain barrel effect. I teach it in depth in levels 1 and 2, as well as mastery inside of the Integrative Health Practitioner Institute. This is episode 2098 of the Cabral concept. So you can go to stephencabral.com/2098 for any links for today's show, but you can go to stephencabral.com/podcasts and actually search any topics you have. So what we're trying to do is open source integrative health and true functional medicine, natural healing. So that's what this is all about. And again, if it's helpful, I always just say, just share it with someone else. That's really what this is all about. So the first question we would ask to get to the bottom of these digestive issues is this: how long has it been going on? And this is such an important question to ask. How long have you had these digestive issues? They might say, well, I guess it's been about 3 years. And I say, okay, when exactly did it start? Did it start after a particular event? And they might think back and they say, you know what? I guess I've never really thought about it, but it happened in December of 2019, and I actually was really sick and I had to take a course of antibiotics. That is a huge game-changing detail that the person may never have shared if I didn't ask that question. Because now I'm thinking in the back of my head, not positive, but I'm thinking in the back of my head, oh, well, this person has candida overgrowth and maybe even SIBO, because when they took the antibiotics, it at least allowed for yeast overgrowth. Because almost no, as in 0, medical doctors prescribe any type of antifungal when they're doing an antibacterial. So when they're giving someone an antibacterial, which is an antibiotic, it wipes out a lot of the good bacteria in the gut, and it leaves a lot of space for the yeast and candida to overgrow quickly. So good. Now I'm thinking, all right, again, not good that this person has symptoms, but good. I can help this person. Like this is going to be easy to figure out and easy to begin to solve. I'll get to that in just a moment. So the next question that I'll ask is that, I'll let the conversation flow naturally, but then I'll ask more follow-ups, right? Okay. So what foods make your digestive systems worse? And I've had people say to me like, oh, well, again, maybe I've never exactly thought about it. Like, well, let's just list a few. And sometimes they can't think of it, so I might just kind of move them to a food group, right? And I say, hey, how does it feel when you eat beans and hummus and chili with beans and things like that? They're like, oh no, that gives me a lot of gas. Okay. So I'll write down beans, right? Legumes. Okay. What about when you eat nuts? Any issues with nuts? And they say, no, nuts seem to be okay. Okay, so we move on. And I like, well, what about vegetables? How about broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts? Like, oh no, those cause a lot of gas. Okay, good. Well, we're starting to move in the direction of fructans, right? Fructans in some of these things like cauliflower, right? Brussels sprouts are just hard to break down. And in these beans can ferment inside of the gut when there's yeast overgrowth. All right, so good. We're moving in that direction, right? The next one is this. What foods seem to be okay? What foods seem to help? They're like, well, seems fine when I eat protein, like chicken and beef and fish. Seems okay when I eat most fats. And I said, okay, so would it be fair to say that you get more symptoms when you eat carbohydrates, like vegetables? We haven't talked about fruit. We can talk about fruit and maybe beans, which have a lot of carbs in them as well. They're like, yeah, I think that is fair. Okay. Again, I'm not trying to lead them. I'm trying to get those details out. So now I understand there's absolutely some type of bacterial or yeast overgrowth. This person is fermenting these certain sugars from the carbs in their intestines, right? Here's my little model here if you're watching this on video. If not, we would love you to subscribe over on YouTube. You can check it out. Just my name, Stephen Cabral at YouTube. But you've got 26 feet of digestive tract for the most part. And all of this can blow up like a balloon when there's yeast and bacteria that are fermenting certain fructo, oligo, di, mono, and polysaccharides, right? So we need to be careful of that. Does that mean they should never eat carbs again? No, but it does mean that we need to lower that yeast and bacterial overgrowth. All right. So then I asked them, is it after every meal? This is an important question. IHPs, write down these 9 questions. Is it after every meal? And they say, no, it's not. I can have a smoothie in the morning and it's fine. What do you put in your smoothie? I ask. They're like, well, blueberries and a banana. I said, okay. Those are, for the most part, lower fructans, lower fructose. Bananas borderline. Okay, so we got it. That's okay. It's liquid. It's easy to digest. It's basically broken down. No issues there. They've got their protein in it. Great. So then I say, okay, well, what about after lunch? They're like, no, lunch is an issue. And I say, okay, well, what do you have for lunch? And they're like, well, typically it's a salad, and sometimes I add this and that. Okay, right? So these whole food meals seem to set it off. And I said, is that every time? They're like, yeah, pretty much all the time. And I say, okay, understood, got it. And then I wrote, or the next question that I always, again, will ask is, what if you weren't to eat that? Would it still happen? This one seems a little confusing for a lot of people. So let me share with you why. A lot of people will tell me that their bloating begins after lunch every day. And I say, that's really interesting. Is it the time of day or is it lunch? We don't know. We have a hypothesis that it's lunch. Have we tested that? The answer is probably no. I'm not going to ask the person not to have lunch, although some people are willing to do a 24-hour fast and see how their body feels. Others maybe not, right? And the 24-hour fast will still include liquid. But I will then ask them, we know the smoothie works for breakfast. What I want you to do is use that same smoothie for lunch as well. Not forever, just for 2 days, maybe 3, because I don't want just a coincidence on one day. So they say, oh, you know what? I did the smoothie for breakfast. I did the same one for lunch, and I didn't have any bloating. I say, great. That's more data. Now I know that it's this whole food meal that you're not able to digest. You're able to digest, or you're able to break down food if it's an easier, simpler, right meal, but you're not able to break down this food. Okay, so we know the bloating is not tied to the time of the day or any food. It's tied to these specific larger whole food meals. Good, got it. We can work on that, right? We can strengthen that digestion. Then I ask this, what have you ever tried before that has gotten some level of success? I love this question because it makes my job as a practitioner much easier, right? So again, if you're a practitioner, copy these questions. This has taken me 20 years of asking these questions, right? To kind of formulate them. So people will tell me, you know what? I went on vacation and actually I want to share that with you next. So I'll share that with you in just a moment because that happens so often you'd be shocked. So they might say this, well, I went on a low carb diet It wasn't sustainable for me, they'll say, but I went on a low carb diet where I mainly just ate protein and some fat, and I didn't have any bloating or gas. But it's not something that they maybe wanted to do, or they knew that that was an underlying root cause. I say, okay, understandable. Got it. That makes sense. And I'll ask, hey, is there anything else you did? They say, well, I've done a 2-day fast before and I felt good on that. Okay, good. So when we're not putting in these fermentable carbs, you feel better. All right. Anything else? I always ask, like, is there another one? And they say, well, no, maybe that's all I can think of. Or they said, I did juicing for 2 days and that worked. Okay, great. Because again, it's simple to digest. There's nothing really to break down. There's not a lot fermentable there unless it's certain types of fruits that are more fermentable, right? Okay. Then I always ask, was there a period of time since December 2019 when you got some relief? Like, has there ever been a time when you got some relief besides the diet that you just mentioned to me? And they might say something like, and again, this is common. They might say, well, I went on vacation about 2 months ago and I actually wasn't really watching what I was eating and I didn't have any digestive issues, very little bloating. Why is that? And this is really interesting. And it's the way that stress plays a greater factor into digestion as well. Meaning the yeast and the bacteria is probably still there. But what allowed them to have less symptoms, right? They probably had some symptoms, but just not to what they typically have, is they were able to be more relaxed, which enabled their enteric nervous system, which is the nervous system of the digestive system, it has its own nervous system, allowed it to be calmer, which then allowed better hydrochloric acid production, pepsin production, pancreatic enzymes, bowel motility, etc. Right? So that's an important one for me to look at as well. That's really, really interesting. And the last question I ask is this. I always say this, and I love this one too, so please do copy this. If you had to guess, what do you think the issue is with your digestive system? Now, you might get some people, if you have a good relationship with them, like, well, that's your job. You're supposed to figure it out. I say, I know it's my job. I know I'm supposed to figure it out, and I think we're there. However, what do you think it is if you had to guess? And they might say, well, I have no idea, right? Because they very well may not, because maybe they would have already done it, right? Or they might say, it really does seem that I have an issue with carbohydrates. And that seems to be the big issue. Now, as an integrative health practitioner, that it's not the carbohydrates, that it's the imbalanced yeast overgrowth and bacterial overgrowth. And then what happens is they get fed to a larger degree, even though they're great prebiotics and all these things, is causing more overgrowth, right? And gas and bloating and methane gas and all of these things. So, but it's good to ask, because this isn't just about gut healing. I'll ask these things for high stress, for low energy, for brain fog, for headaches. So I take these same questions and I reformulate them for whatever it might be. And if you are a good practitioner and your goal is the goal of the client, the wellness client, then you just want to make sure that you continue to peel back that onion and figure out why. So by the time we've gotten to this part of the consultation, I'll repeat back what I've heard. And of course, I'll move on to any topic that I need to. But what I'll share with this is just say, okay, as a practitioner, it seems clear to me that there is candida overgrowth and bacterial overgrowth that may have occurred after antibiotic use, which is not normal. It's not healthy, but it's quite common. I can't provide you with a medical-based diagnosis. However, what I would like to do is to test this hypothesis. And if it ends up being true, well, then we have the protocols to naturally rebalance your gut. And we've done this for thousands and thousands of other people, tens of thousands of other people. So here's what I recommend. And what I recommend is the Candida Metabolic and Vitamins Test. That is going to assess yeast overgrowth and certain types of bacterial overgrowth and good bacteria, and it's the best lab for that. It's a simple urine-based test. Now, in addition to that great data, it's going to look at your vitamin levels, neurotransmitter metabolite levels, detox capacity, mitochondrial energy, and so much more. Great lab. The second lab I recommend is one to look for H. pylori, because this could have H. pylori as part of its root cause. it looks at parasites, it looks at yeast to a minor degree, and it looks at bacteria to a much larger degree. And that's called the bacterium parasite stool test. It's a 3-day stool test. Really simple. Whenever you have a bowel movement for those 3 days, you're collecting a small sample and then you mail it back to the lab. And the third lab test is the IgG food sensitivity test to look for underlying hidden in foods that causing inflammation in your body over the next 1 to 3 days after you eat them. And I put those labs in what I would say are order of importance. So you can run all three, which would be amazing, and it's going to give you the most amount of data. They're all different. Or you can choose 1 and 3, 1 and 2, or 1, 2, and 3, or even just 1 if you chose to. So that's what I'm sharing with the client. Now, let's say it's a virtual-based client. They ask me questions. They can't afford lab testing. Listen, my goal is to help all people. I will then share with them our online assessments, and they can check to see if they have these issues. So you can do this yourself by going to stevencabral.com/assessments. And you don't even need to be a wellness coaching client or purchase the lab. You don't even need to enter your email address, but you can actually take the assessment on bacterial overgrowth or Candida, and I believe there's even some for parasites and H. pylori as well. There's a lot. There's for female hormones, for thyroid, for toxicity. So you can check those out at stevencabral.com/assessments. So then after we get the lab results back, what are we going to do? Well, if we see parasites, we're going to be doing a parasite rebalancing protocol. If we see H. pylori, we're going to be doing an H. pylori rebalancing protocol. If we see yeast and or bacteria, we're going to be doing the CBO protocol to rebalance that gut bacteria. Each one of those protocols are anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks. And H. pylori and yeast and bacteria can all be done concurrently at the same time. Parasite would come first if there was parasites. We work from most egregious to least. And after that, you're going to actually just do a very simple protocol to then heal and seal the gut. And that's called our CBO finisher. That's done after the rebalancing to help heal and seal this 21, 23 feet of small intestinal tract, right? So that's really important so that you, again, help to rebalance those inflammation and immune-based levels. So this is exactly what we do in our practice for our gut healing and our digestive plan. And then we simply customize that as needed for each individual based on what else we see on those labs. Low B vitamins, okay, we're going to add in an activated B complex. Low vitamin C, okay, we're going to add in something like an alkalizing vitamin C or full spectrum vitamin C. Low on magnesium, okay, full spectrum magnesium, right? Sleep issues, okay, we have the sleep health protocol. So we're going to customize it for the individual. But right now, what I was talking about today was simply one issue, which is gut-based healing. So this is exactly, again, what I would do. You've got a bunch of options if you've been dealing with these issues. I teach all of this for the general public if you go to stevencabral.com/courses, I have one on gut rebalancing that actually takes you through all of this lab testing and all of these protocols. It's about 4 hours long. It's the equivalent to reading about a dozen or 2 dozen gut healing based books, all for you to be able to go through with me teaching this on video. And then what you can also do with the assessments that I spoke about, you can work with one of our integrative health practitioners on the EcoLife team, or you can even visit integrativehealthpractitioner.org and you can click on practitioners. You can find practitioners all over the world that are level 2 that specialize in this type of lab testing. So again, the answers are out there. They really are. And our goal is to help you to figure out those underlying root causes. So hopefully this podcast was helpful. The labs I mentioned are at stevencabral.com/labs. The assessments are at stevencabral.com/assessments. The protocols like the parasite, H. pylori, CBO protocol, CBO finisher are at stevencabral.com/ecolife. Again, always let us know if there's any questions. Hopefully this was helpful. Thank you so much for tuning in. And please do feel free to share this show with anyone you believe it could serve.